Welcome back to episode 3 of my Weakpoint Wednesday series. In this series, I'll be covering a new muscle group every single Wednesday. I'll be breaking down its anatomy. I'll also be giving you how to organize it in a common training split in order for you to target that weak point effectively. I'll also be giving you what I feel the most optimal exercises for doing so, and I'll also be giving you a workout at the end of the video as well. So first, I'd like to define what a weak point is. A weak point is a specific muscle group that's lagging behind in development compared to other muscle groups in your body. And this could be because of genetic differences, it could be because of bad exercise selection, bad exercise technique, or even bad exercise form. When it comes to weak point training, what you want to really emphasize that weak point. You want to try to increase training frequency of it, and you also want to gradually try to increase volume. I think the number one mistake that people make when they try to attack weak point training is they try to focus on everything all at once, and they don't specifically isolate the weak point. By doing so, you're not going to be able to bring up the muscle group that you're intending to bring up. So yeah, you definitely want to make sure you're emphasizing that in your workouts. In this week's episode, I'm going to be continuing the shoulder edition of my weak point series, but this time I'll be focusing on the rear delts. And in order to properly effectively train the rear delts, we need to have an understanding of their function and the anatomy, so that's what I'll be covering next. The shoulder is actually comprised of 3 different heads. The first head is actually the front delt. I haven't covered that one yet. That will be actually in episode 5. I'll be going over the front delt. And then the second head is the side delt. That's actually called the medial delt. And I've covered that already in the previous episode, which was episode 2. So if you haven't seen that video, then definitely go check it out. And like I mentioned today, I'll be covering the rear delts. So yeah, I kind of want to go over their function a little bit, so you kind of have an idea of how to effectively train them. So the rear delts actually originate a little bit further back in the scapula, and they insert down into wherever your other shoulder muscle inserts into the humerus. And the primary function of them is horizontal shoulder abduction, which is basically what you see in a reverse fly when you bring your arms back. So that's the function of them, and honestly, that's probably the most underdeveloped part of any bodybuilder is the rear delts. But after this week's episode, everybody's going to have the goal is to bring up the rear delts and really prioritize them. So I think that everybody could definitely use some more rear delt training, and there's a lot of different benefits with rear delt training. Not only is it great for postural issues, but it can also help with shoulder stability, and it can also reduces your chances of getting injured as well. A lot of your compound movements that you're probably already doing, like your lat pull downs or your seated rows or your bent over rows, are probably hitting the rear delts just a little bit. But honestly, it's based on studies that were performed, it's actually been shown that isolation exercises for the rear delts have outperformed the compound movement. So that's kind of why we're going to be focusing this week's episode on the best, in my opinion, the best isolation exercises for actually targeting the rear delts. So yeah, now that we've actually covered the anatomy, I want to move into actually how to organize it in one of the 3 common training splits. So before we actually divide into the training splits, our training, we need to first know how much volume and frequency to do for the rear delts. So volume is actually the same as it is for the side delts. For the rear delts, you want to perform 16 to 22 sets of rear delt training, and because it's a weak point in your physique, I would definitely recommend staying on the higher end. So I'd probably aim to get 20 to 22 weekly sets of rear delt training. And frequency, since the muscle group, the rear delts is a much smaller muscle group, you can actually hit them much more frequently, up to 6 times per week. So I definitely recommend spreading out your rear delt training. The more you're able to hit them, the more you're able to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, and you're able to actually experience a lot more growth that way. So I would definitely try to spread them out, and that's what we're going to do here. So now that I've covered the volume and frequency, I'm actually going to be moving on to the training splits now. Starting off with the upper-lower split. So you're going to be coming in and you're going to be doing your upper split first, and that's going to consist of your shoulders, which is going to be prioritizing your rear delt. So you're going to kick your workout off with your rear delt training, and you're going to aim to get, I'd say anywhere from 8 to 10 sets. 10 sets would be better, because if you did 2 sessions of 10 sets, you'd actually have 20 sets, which would be great. And you actually have the option as well on your lower days, which would be your leg days, to actually do some rear delt training if you'd want to. And I definitely recommend doing that if you don't find yourself too sore, just because you want to hit them as frequently as possible. So even including like a set of face pulls would be a great exercise. I'll go over that when I go over the exercises. But even to include a set of face pulls at the end of your leg workout on your lower days, that would be a great option. So yeah, like I said, you probably want to go in on both your upper days and hit 10 sets of rear delt training, and then like I said, an optional on the lower day. So now moving into the push-pull leg split. So I'm actually going to be starting this one off with the pull workout, because you're going to be hitting your back, biceps, and rear delts. So I'd probably come in and I would hit my, once again going with the priority principle, I would hit my rear delts first, and then I'd move on to the rest of my training. And then as you can see there on the screen, you got a push and then a leg day, and then you have a rest day after that. So on both of your pull days, you're going to be hitting your rear delts, And even on your leg day, like I said, same thing goes. You can include a set of face pulls at the end just to kind of get your volume up. But if you're trying to aim for, I would say 10 sets per session, and then maybe do that 2 sets on after your workout on leg day, then you're going to be anywhere from 20 to 22 sets, which is what you want. So that's kind of how I would organize it. Like I said, I'll bring them up on the screen so you're able to see how I would do it. But yeah, that's probably the most effective way, because then you're hitting them like 2.5 times per week, I would say, because you're doing 2 full workouts and then you're just throwing them in at the end of your leg training. Now moving on to the final split, which is actually the bro split. So to organize this, what I would do is on day 1, I would come in and I would do my shoulder workout, but I would prioritize rear delts, so I would do them first once again. And then maybe on your chest day, I like to do some face pulls on your chest day, because you're able to, from all that pressing that you're doing with your chest, you're able to actually even it out with some face pulls, and it's like a corrective issue to kind of help fix your posture. I find it's a great tool for that. So I would definitely recommend doing some rear delts on your chest day. And then once again on day 6, you would do your shoulders again. You would do your rear delts. So you're hitting it with enough frequency, and if you're getting your volume in of anywhere to 8 to 10 sets, then you should be good for your volume as well. So yeah, that's kind of how I would organize it in the bro split. But like I said, it's hard to get every other muscle group the frequency that it needs. So that's kind of why I feel like it's the least effective split out of all of them.
Now we're moving on to the rear delt exercises that I feel are the most optimal. As I previously mentioned, in order to make our rear delt training as effective as possible, we need to completely isolate them to ensure we're really able to optimize their development. Starting with day 1 of your rear delt training, the first exercise is going to be the reverse machine fly. This is a great exercise to start out with because you're able to warm up your shoulders while effectively isolating your rear delts in the process. It makes for a great rear delt activation exercise to help get some blood into the muscle, and it can also improve your mind-muscle connection with the muscle, allowing you to feel a better contraction within the next 2 exercises that we're about to do. I think about when I'm doing this exercise, retracting my scapula and really using a pronated grip, which means palms facing down, to increase the rear delt engagement. I've programmed 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps, so really make sure you select a weight that allows you to land within this range. The second exercise is going to be the incline dumbbell rear row. This is a great exercise because your chest is actually being supported by the bench, so you're able to eliminate the other muscle groups from trying to take over with the movement. And the incline actually provides for a nice stretch on your delts, allowing you to take full advantage of that increased range of motion. After the first exercise, your delts should have a nice pump in them, and you'll actually be able to feel a much better contraction because of the activation exercise. As you can notice from the video, I'm actually turning my hands or supinating my forearms during the movement. This will actually create external rotation, which is a very important function of the rear delts. This exercise really burns when you do it right, and is another great variation to include in your rear delt training. For this exercise, I've actually programmed 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps, so make sure you're really driving through with your elbow and focus on contracting and squeezing your rear delts the entire time. The final exercise for day 1 is actually going to be the face pull. This is a great exercise for really finishing off the rear delts. With the use of the rope attachment, you really want to make sure you're getting a nice full range of motion. Just like with the incline rear row, this one actually really burns. As you can see here, this is the standing variation, but I also really like the lying face pull because it actually can further isolate your rear delts, and I find that it creates a nice deep stretch by having that pull on the way up. And it also improves the consistency of each rep because your elbows are actually hitting the floor. Another interesting variation of the face pull is actually the seated face pull. I really like this because it provides a bunch of different variety that you can do when performing this exercise. So don't be afraid to try out the same exercise in a bunch of different ways because you have to figure out which one works best and which one feels best for you. And for me, this actually happens to be the lying face pull. So that's normally the one that I always go to. I programmed 3 sets of 12 to 15 reps to really finish off that volume for the rear delts. And at the end of the video, I will summarize both day 1 and day 2 of the rear delt training. So we're going to kick day 2 of our rear delt weak point training off with the lat pull down rear rows. This is an awesome exercise because it allows you to load the weight a little bit heavier than you're used to for the rear delts. And I find that because of this, you're able to create a lot more tension and actually stimulate the muscle to grow a little bit. So what you want to do with this exercise is lean back, and you want to pull the bar to around about the top of your chest. And as you can see, both my shoulders are parallel. This creates the most favorable position for actually targeting the rear delts. For this exercise, I've programmed 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps, and you really want to make sure you're leaning back, and even if you want to pause for a second at the end of the movement to really further squeeze and contract those rear delts. The second exercise for day 2 is going to be the reverse cable flies. This is great for keeping constant tension on the delts, and for me, I tend to feel this one much better than I do with any type of dumbbell reverse flies. So that's kind of why I prefer it. Nothing too fancy here. You just want to make sure you retract your scapula and always use full range of motion. That pretty much goes with anything. You want to really stretch that muscle. And for this exercise, I actually programmed 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. So this should mean that your last set, you shouldn't be able to do any more than 12. So make sure you pick the appropriate amount of weight. And the last exercise is going to be what we finished off with day 1 with. It's going to be the face pull again. I just like how extremely effective it is at actually hitting the rear delts. Same thing applies for the first day. And like I previously mentioned, don't be afraid to swap out the standing with the lying or seated variation. Just do whatever feels the most optimal or most comfortable for you.
That's going to conclude episode 3 of my rear delt training. I hope everybody enjoyed the video and took something from the exercises. I guarantee if you really emphasize your rear delts with those exercises that I gave there, I guarantee you'll be able to bring them up. And honestly, it's probably the most underdeveloped part of the shoulder for most people. And when you really bring it up, it really gives you a nice aesthetic look, and it really finishes off the roundness of your shoulder. So definitely take the time to do that and really focus on the exercises. One thing that I want to note with Weakpoint training is that it really takes a lot of consistency and it takes a lot of patience. So don't think that by doing these exercises for a couple of weeks you're going to notice a difference. I would definitely recommend doing them for 6 to 8 weeks and really sticking to doing these exercises, and I guarantee if you do that, you'll definitely see results. Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I have a lot of great content in the works. Like I said, I got this Weakpoint Wednesday series where I cover a new muscle group every single week, and I also have the clean bulk series. If you haven't checked out episode 2 of my Weakpoint Wednesday series, which was on actually side delts training, how it kind of ties into the rear delts, because I mean it's a shoulder edition that I'm kind of going over. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely check that out. And also make sure you hit the bell notification to make sure you get updated for every time I put out a new video, because YouTube kind of has a funny way of hiding them. So definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell notifications. And if you'd like to see more videos from me, like I did mention, I do have a clean bulk series. The last video that I put out on that was actually the difference between rack pulls and deadlifts and which one's ultimately better for building a better back. So definitely go check that out if you haven't. I did a comparison between the two, and I found it to be really useful. So yeah, definitely go check that out if you haven't. And then basically it's the clean bulk series is just outlining my journey to the natural bodybuilding stage. I'm preparing for a natural bodybuilding show next year. So yeah, it's going to be outlining that. I also provide a lot of motivational videos. I do educational videos, nutrition videos. I have a lot of different content on there. So yeah, definitely go check that out if you haven't. And make sure you like the video as well. It kind of raises some awareness for my channel, and it might expose somebody who likes this kind of content to check out my channel. So definitely give that video a like. And yeah, until next Wednesday, it's going to be episode 4 of my Weakpoint Wednesday series coming on Wednesday. So I'll catch everybody then. All right, peace out.